Hi, welcome. This mini lecture is meant to be viewed prior to our second class, week 2. It's based on themes found in the textbook and is just meant to give a little bit of extra context to the material. So the purpose of this mini lecture is to discuss the interpersonal process and how we begin to engage in the interpersonal process in a way that allows for building trust and safety, which leads to healing. Of course, that's our ultimate goal as therapists. So what is the interpersonal process and how do we engage in it? The interpersonal process is what's actually going on between client and therapist. So how do we conceptualize this? I think of it as a dance between therapist and client. There's therapist, client, and then there's this sacred space in between. So what's swirling there in that sacred space? It's really an honor and a true privilege to be able to sit in that space with clients. It's also a tremendous responsibility. So we always want to be checking in with ourselves, what's going on for us, and being mindful of what's going on for our clients. So our clients come to us because they want for something to change. They need for something to change. And so we need to always be asking ourselves, what does the client need and how can I provide that? And there's many paths up the mountain that we're always going to be re-examining as throughout our career. But the one constant is that we are the therapists in the relationship, and therapists can be the instrument of change. And this is the concept of self as instrument. And when we talk about self as instrument, we're really talking about bringing our entire experience as a human into the room with our client. And so it's a combination of ability, identity, relational skills, moral awareness, et cetera, et cetera. But the short of that is that it's our entire personhood, our entire human experience. We bring that into the room with this other being. Now, of course, I'm not going to be self-disclosing. I'm not going to be talking about my experience as a human, but I am sitting in my personhood with this other person sitting in their personhood, and it's a relationship. Now, because we're talking about people, we need to include the importance of being mindful of privilege, oppression, the power imbalance with therapist and client. And we'll continue to talk about that as we go on in class. So when we're determining the needs of the client, we're always monitoring what's going on between client and therapist, and we're always sorting through what's content and what's process. So content is the story. That's what we're hearing the client say. Process is the feelings and the experiencing attached to the story that the client is telling us. And we must always join in the process, not the content. So as a friend or family member, if someone's telling us a story, we might say something like, wow, what happened then? Or what did they say then? But as a therapist, that's not as important. We might ask something like, what are you feeling when you tell me the story? What comes up for you when you tell me they said this to you? Oftentimes with clients, they'll tell me a story and I'll say something like, I'm hearing this story and it sounds like it's coming from up here in your head. You're telling me this story. But what I'm interested in is what you're feeling down here when you tell me this story. So we really want to drop into that process. That's where the work will happen. And this dropping in is what allows for the linking of themes and patterns and sharing ownership of this process and this journey. Now, in sharing ownership, this means we can't be passive observers, and that can feel awkward and rude. And so it's always really important, necessary, that we sensitively navigate journeying through this with the client, being mindful, again, always of issues surrounding culture, privilege, power imbalance, etc. So when we do this safely and appropriately, when we navigate these sensitive issues, it offers an experience, a new type of experience, builds a lot of trust, and can create a lot of safety. So part two, engaging in the interpersonal process. How do we do this? Well, the first stage of therapy is building the working alliance. And we do this through empathic engagement, building trust, rapport, safety, becoming an ally in the discomfort that our client is experiencing, becoming an ally on this journey. So we never want to engage with clients the way the rest of the world does. It can feel easy to drop into that typical social interaction that we do all day, every day in the world. It can feel really vulnerable for both client and therapist to drop into that deeper level of interaction, but we have this beautiful and unique opportunity to do so. And in doing so, we have the opportunity to create a new type of relationship for our clients. And that's really the goal of this therapeutic relationship. So here are a few skills, techniques for building the working alliance. And this comes from Howard Figler's Career Counseling Handbook. Of course, we're not specifically doing career counseling, but I find that these pragmatic, simple concepts can be really helpful for beginning clinicians. Clarifying content, reflecting back what you heard from the client. This is the content, this is the story. The purpose of this is that the client feels understood. Now, we're not literally regurgitating what we heard. We're not memorizing what they say and repeating it back to them. We are summarizing the essence of what they've said, and this allows them to feel understood, to feel heard. Reflecting feeling. So reflecting the emotions attached to what you've just heard. And we always want to be reading between the lines. And this is the emotional process. The content is the story. This is the process. And the purpose here, of course, the client feels understood, and we're really joining in this relationship. Open-ended questioning. This is what we all know about psychotherapy, right? This allows for more opportunity for the client to tell us what's going on. Questions that begin with what, how, in what ways. It's an open invitation for the client to talk. So some examples. Tell me about your situation as you see it. What were you feeling when that happened? Can you tell me more about that? We're always wanting to get in between and underneath what a client is saying and to link those themes and patterns. Strength finding. Always keeping an eye on what might be going well. This identifies resilience. It gives an opportunity to reflect in new ways for the client to view things through a new lens. One thing to be really mindful here is that the client may feel that we are minimizing their distress if they feel that we're overshadowing the distress by talking about what's good. Creative imagining. This encourages the client to envision other possibilities. It's done through open-ended questions, visualization, diving into fantasy. So what does your client hope for and dream about? That's really important. And this may sound a little juvenile, but I will often ask clients, if I had a magic wand, what could we make happen? And that can lead to a lot of really important work. Role play. Role play gives clients the opportunity to practice and can be really empowering. It can be done with a variety of outcomes so a client can see how they might feel in different scenarios. I use the language play the tape through. It's a bit dated, but it's a nice visual of imagining the full tape and thinking start to finish all the details of any scenario. What's the worst case situation? And let's prepare for that. Important to note, not everyone feels safe doing this. People can feel embarrassed, like there's a performative aspect. So you just want to be really mindful of that. Checking in with your client. Are expectations being met? And don't feel badly if they're not, because asking is the important part of this step because we're building a new kind of relationship with our clients. So I always feel grateful when a client tells me that things aren't going as they expected. It gives me the opportunity to change course. And it also means that they felt safe enough to tell me that this wasn't going as they'd hoped. So summarizing for our self and client, collecting data and moving forward. This allows for breathing space in the session, for regrouping, making sure that we're still on the same page and that we're still journeying together, because that's the goal of this, is to journey together. So I'm wondering now if you're feeling ready to practice sitting in the therapist chair. And after watching this, if anything needs to be clarified, please let me know. I encourage you to imagine what you might be feeling or thinking as you sit with your first client, and to jot down any notes or questions so that we can discuss in class. Until then, thanks for watching.